and then you are now faced with importation of goods that are produced in economies where
have very low interest rates.
Very low interest rate. Definitely you cannot compete. So our local industries are not very competitive. Their goods come out at very high rate. And sometimes in an effort to make sure it comes in at a very low rate, the quality is poor. And then you have somebody who has only very little money on him wanting to buy something of high quality. So there is that problem with our local manufacturers. And of course, saddled with the problem of infrastructures, no power, diesel the cost of diesel is high and everything. So there is no way the man will produce something at a very competitive
Okay,
price.
before we go into the products themselves, let's go back to this local industry patronage bill.
Okay.
The bill seeks to, among other things, compel government ministries, departments and agencies to make top priority locally produced goods, perhaps their PCs and their offers and some other things. It's obviously going to start from the government. They want to lead by example.
It has to start from them.
How feasible do you think is that?
Yeah, I think it is. You see, government itself must be prepared to implement and to enforce. We have a lot of laws in the country that are just there on paper. So government itself must be prepared to ensure that after this bill is passed, right from the top to the bottom, people are able to implement, are able to enforce and ensure that this, the provision of the bill, of the law, is carried out to the letter. It's not about getting a supplier locally who is going to bring in goods from outside the country. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about locally manufactured goods. And we have quite a number of them. Quite a number. Let me give you an example. Imagine government being able to implement that rule and says, okay, the uniform of the entire uniform force in this country, the police, the army, the navy, the air force, the paramilitary, everybody must be sourced locally. Imagine the quantum growth it will give to the textile sector.
Are you saying that mostly those uniforms are imported?
I can tell you, mostly they are. Mostly they are. So you can imagine what quantum growth that will give to this troubled textile sector. And the amount of job it's going to create automatically. I'm just giving, that's just one sector. Look at the food and drink sector. There's so much that is being done there, but most of it is imported into this country, sometimes just packaged here. So we are only giving jobs to economies that are even doing better than us.
In terms of a sense of urgency, because I find it quite disturbing, because when one looks at what the SON says, the Standards Organization of Nigeria, 80%, we have so many, we have all these regulatory agencies, we have policymakers, we have policies, we're not sure how much of that is being implemented. Do you think there's a sense of urgency on the part of the policymakers?
Well, my dear sister, it's better late than never. Yes, we should have had this much before now, but now that it is here, let us see some sense of urgency and seriousness in the National Assembly. That yes, we really want this thing on ground and fast too. Let the National Assembly do its own job, and then we wait on the executive arm of government to implement. Okay,
speaking about implementation, let's look at some of the penalties being proposed that will be attached to the bill. Lawmakers are proposing that for the government defaulters, now for the MDAs, compulsory retirement, dismissal, fines, and in some instances jail terms. Yeah, do you see the government actually enforcing some, particularly dismissal, jail terms?
The government can enforce it, but then the person has to be caught first. That is the person has to be caught first. Who is going to
the person, or perhaps the ministry?
If we are talking about jail time, the ministry is not going to go to jail. There must be, maybe we are talking about the
admin or the admin officer who didn't ensure that pieces
or whatever. The person that signs off, maybe the person that signs off and approves the purchase. That is the ministry, as far as I'm concerned. That's the way it looks, or that's the department. So that's the person that's going to suffer. It's not the ministry. So if that is there, I'm sure people don't want to lose their job over such issues. I'm sure but then they have to be caught first.
Are you confident that we would see that that actually happening? People being brought to book, held accountable over a certain policy that government is trying to enforce to ensure that at the end of the day, the economy as a whole benefits from it?
To be candid, I must confess to you, we've not had the kind of examples that will give us a lot of confidence in that area. But I want to remain optimistic.
Apart from being optimistic,
Yes.
what can the LCCI do in terms of something very solid, concrete, to ensure that, yes, you're on their case, on the federal government's case, as soon as, we're using the word if this bill is passed eventually, and some of these penalties actually also pass along with the bill, perhaps compulsory retirement, dismissal, and fines, to ensure that at LCCI, as an advocacy body, you can't force government, but you can always stay at the doorstep and ensure that, yes, are you going, do you have any such plans?
We can, because the people that this bill are going to affect adversely or positively are our members. And then we of course do a lot of research, we do a lot of survey and everything. We can find out if this law is passed, whether there is a difference in patronage in terms of the public sector patronage of our members, and that will go a long way in telling us how far this bill is being implemented. Because when you look at Lagos, you look at Abuja, you look at Port Harcourt, by the time you take a survey in those critical areas, you will be able to know, you can judge, you can adduce, you can say, okay, if this is happening in Abuja, it's happening in Lagos, then definitely it can be said to be happening all over the country. So we're going to rely more on our members. Don't forget, SME make up 75% of membership of the LCCI. So we'll find out from them what exactly they are going through. We do this every quarter, and once this bill is passed, we're going to do a sustained survey that will ensure that we know whether they are receiving more patronage from government agencies or not. Okay,
before then, is the LCCI right now, as we speak, putting any kind of pressure on the lawmakers to ensure that this bill is speedily passed?
Well, let me put it this way: the government itself came up. It's a sponsored bill by government itself, and the lawmakers have said we are going to ensure there's a speedy passage of this bill. One has to be, even when you are doing advocacy, you have to be careful. They definitely have a due process to go through. We are going to monitor, let me use that, we're going to monitor and make sure that it's not like some of these other bills that have failed to see the light of day. We're going to monitor, and we're going to raise our voices if we perceive that there is any move to thwart the bill.
Apart from because we're talking about the bill in general, what about the contents of the bill? Are you privy to the contents of the bill? Can you influence it in any way? You said over 70% of your members are SMEs. I mean, that would definitely affect them, to a large, to some extent. So ensuring that many of the contents of the bill, is favorable to these manufacturers in the first place.
Yeah, I think I will say we have an advocacy group in the chamber. We have a commercial law group that is currently also studying the bill. Because you have to be careful. You must talk from the position of knowledge. They're also studying the bill and look at, and because it's a chamber of commerce, you must take care of the position of every sector. Because all these sectors, even the people that are importing these goods are also members of the LCCI.
Oh, really?
Yeah, of course, they are members of the LCCI.
And that's local manufacturer importing foreign goods.
Yes, they are also members.
Because they can't compete with, the other imports.
But in an economy, that is the normal thing. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody must face the fact that we must develop our own economy, even if you are an importer. It pays you to have an economy that is thriving, that is growing. That can even make you a manufacturer at the end of the day. But I'm just digressing. But the thing is, we are going to study it, and if we find out there is we still have a little bit time to talk with government on any area we think is inimical to the growth of business. Okay. We must also not kill business trying to make some survive.
Okay, so
just we must balance it, exactly.
Try to create a win-win situation. Exactly. Now let's talk about the goods, the locally produced goods themselves. Now, like I mentioned, as you know, 80% of that, coming from outside of the country. That means that's I think is indicative of the fact that perhaps for the average Nigerian, there's a reason why he looks at product A from Asia or somewhere else, product B from Nigeria, the same exact product, but then he goes for product A, which somewhere in China or something. There's a reason. So obviously there's issue of quality. Yes. Now I keep wondering, because I'm a consumer myself. Over the years, there's some products, household products that I've been, that I use, perhaps from the biscuit to the locally made sweets. And I personally have seen a constant drop in quality. I opened a sweet 2 weeks, and I just couldn't believe. I know what it was 5-10 years ago, growing up, looking at it. And I held it, and I couldn't believe the weight. Obviously, there were so many things wrong with it. So I knew that obviously this company is struggling and they're obviously cutting corners, and it cannot compete if you take a sweet that's imported.
Exactly.
So for the manufacturers themselves, while one sympathizes and appreciates what they're going through, they also must know that at the end of the day, the consumer wants value for his money. So it's not enough to just say, let's be patriotic and let's,
Exactly. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you, and that is why bodies, organized private sector bodies like the LCCI, have continued to harp on the issue of quality